Well, if that isn't all but confirming the fact that Jinshi is basically going to be the next ruler, I don't know what will. There was so much hinted at and pretty much confirmed this episode, and I don't even know where to begin. This episode was quite a bit of a drop. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like this series because it kind of takes its time. It does a lot of these little mysteries, and it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of, you know, who these individuals are, who's actually pulling the strings of the background, who's actually the leader, who is Jinshi, all this kind of stuff. This episode just pretty much gave them everything they wanted. If this wasn't an episode they were satisfied with, I don't know what will be. But yes, I like the Emperor. I really do like the Emperor. He's such a troll. Dude's such a troll. Well, I just raise up Maomao to the position of consort. I'll just casually make her a consort. That'll work out, right? Yeah, I don't really want to mess with Lacan. Don't really want to get on Lacan's bad side. Let's just have Jinshi do it. And there's so much in this episode that was so fantastic. But yes, that final line, I mean, Jinshi's line, the idea of saying he understands. Again, I don't really know exactly what they're doing here, but it's obviously hinting at the idea that Jinshi should be the next ruler. And I think I had this theory at some point. My gosh, it's been so long since the first season. It feels like it's been so long since the first season. And I had a lot of theories about this series way back then. And one of my theories was the idea that Jinshi was being protected. That the current ruler, his brother, was essentially protecting him by taking the position of emperor. But Jinshi has always been the rightful heir, the one that's supposed to take over. And this episode kind of hints at that. The idea of saying, you know, don't bring in blood from the outside. I understand that. Does a Majesty really understand that? And then Jinshi responds to it. It's like, yeah, that pretty much says it. Like I don't know how else you're going to get. I like the fact that the episode opens up with Jinshi saying that, you know, I found out later on that the Emperor is actually my brother. And, oh yeah, this slow-witted girl figured out eventually. She probably figured it out already. And then it cuts to the end of the episode. It's literally Maomao going, who is he really? I don't want to think about it. It's not that she's slow-witted. It's just that she doesn't want to figure it out. It's not my problem. Don't get involved. This is stuff that you do not think about. Thinking about the bloodline of the Emperor and stuff like that, that's for people that are way of high power who don't mind putting their life at risk because they want more power. For me, no. Don't even think about it. Just say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and go about your business. But I love that. The episode opens up with Jinshi basically, again, pretty much pointing out the fact that he is the Emperor's brother and just wanting Maomao to figure it out. I think that's the more interesting thing. He wants Maomao to figure it out because it'll make him feel relieved. He doesn't have to hide it anymore. He hates having to hide it from her, ? Or if it's just more of relief of having somebody that knows what's going on because he wants to share that with somebody. I think it's because he likes Maomao and he wants Maomao to know. He just can't say it. And so he's hoping she'll figure it out so that he doesn't have to hide it anymore. I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of point there, that he would find relief in her knowing, that he kind of wishes that she would actually figure it out. The other aspects of the beginning segment of this episode is kind of a question mark to me. He is in a building. I thought that the building was going to be this Shrine of Choosing, but it doesn't look like it. The architecture itself inside there does not look like the Shrine of Choosing. So it's just basically a flashback of Jinshi when he's with his mother, and he ends up being confronted by his father, who seems like he's out of his mind. It's giving an indication this guy seems like he's senile or he's losing something, because you have his grandmother come in, the previous Empress Dowager, I would assume at that point. She comes in and basically ushers him out. Like, just comes in there, grabs him, and takes him away. After the mother comes in to kind of shield him from his father. I don't know why they're so defensive of him from his father. That's going to be the massive question mark there. Again, were they afraid that he would harm him? Were they at that point, even at that moment, trying to hide Jinshi's identity? And the father knew and confronted him and they wanted to keep him away from each other? That's the question mark there. I'd be very curious, again, because that brings up, again, the long-time question that I have is, why is Jinshi in the position that he is? The assumption is to protect him. Just make him close to his brother, so he's still at his brother's side, but nobody knows his identity, so that if somebody does come to assassinate the Emperor, he's still alive. But that would imply this whole thing about somebody possibly killing the Emperor is something that has been long running. For them to have put Jinshi in the position that he is, hiding his identity so long ago, this implies that this whole move to take out the Emperor has been going on for a long time, so they set it up way back here. I don't know, that's the massive question mark there. But again, why are they trying to drag his father away, keep him away from him? And it seems like, again, the previous Empress Dowager, his grandmother, seems to be trying to usher him away. And also, Jinshi's mother doesn't seem to like her. Which I can kind of see that again, because a lot of cases they're going to be from different bloodlines, they're going to be from different families, they probably don't like each other. And again, it could be an aspect of her just not liking them putting Jinshi in the position that he is. But by the look on her face, she's not happy. She is not liking Jinshi's grandmother. And I want to assume that Jinshi's mother is trying to protect him and probably knows this grandmother is probably going to harm him. I don't know. There's a massive question marks there that there's not enough to really kind of dig into. But yeah, other than that, we had Maomao going to see the school, which, yeah, we get to see Xiaolan is doing her training. It's super cute. Seeing her learning, it's so great. And that's when they start to get into the deep lore stuff. This is the stuff that I love. I love getting into deep lore stuff of worlds. And with this particular land, getting into the idea of this Wang Mu, who was apparently this woman that appeared in the land, had a child from Immortal, which, yes, I immediately connect that to Go Shun's story. That kind of answers that question mark there. Yes, the idea of a virgin birth, the idea of being impregnated by some immortal being is something of a common story. This idea of some god coming down and bestowing a child upon a woman, it's something to kind of grant this higher power to their child. It's a great way to kind of seed into a culture the idea that the royalty itself is blessed by God themselves. And yes, it being something of importance in the story that Goshun told makes sense. But I think this is probably where Goshun got that story. And that does sort of cement in my mind my theory that I think the envoys is what Goshun was talking about there. Nothing to do with the pregnancy. In the story that Goshun was telling about the two sisters, that one was impregnated by an immortal being, I think the only part of that story that was true was two girls that looked the same getting out of a room. I think that was the only truth in Goshun's story, and he was trying to figure out how, again, these envoys got out, and he was hoping that Maomao would figure it out, and I think that kind of connects everything, because again, the envoys had the mirrors. They had a lot of those mirrors, and it's a perfect way for them to pull that off. But anyways, that aside, this kind of connects that idea that, yes, there's this story in the distant past about this immortal being, impregnating a woman. It seems to be kind of connecting that story here in the fact this lady came in with this child, bore the child. There was people of the land there before. It's just that she carried a child into this land and, create this whole culture around it. Additionally, also, yes, fluffing it a bit more and saying that she was an immortal who was descended from the celestial realm. Like, even herself, she is kind of seen as a deity. But yeah, that's when Jinshi shows up. They mentioned the idea he was expecting more people to show up. I do like the fact this kind of shows a little bit of the difference in how Maomao and Goshun see the thing and how Jinshi sees the thing. Where Jinshi's like immediately going, well, it's a school, so I thought a bunch of people would show up. And you have Goshun and Maomao over here going, yeah, that's wishful thinking. Again, they're going to know that these people are going to be uncomfortable with coming there. Despite the fact they opened that school, the court women, the servants, and all that kind of stuff are still going to be uncomfortable going there because, again, this is supposed to be something, knowledge and learning and stuff like this is only supposed to be for, like, noble blood and high-status people. So they are going to be uncomfortable coming there. But it's still cool. Yeah, they have, like, 20 people, and it's growing and growing. But yeah, Maomao meets up with Zola, and they end up going over to the teacher's place where we end up learning a little bit about the Shrine of Choosing and the idea that the previous emperor's older brothers end up falling ill, and so they decided to not do the shrine anymore, which we find out why that is later on. But yes, also getting a little bit of note that Loumen used to wander around there. He used to wander around the rear palace, and apparently he was very fascinated by the Shrine of Choosing. So we had a little connection there. The guy finding out that Maomao is connected to Loumen. And then we go to the emperor who wants to bring Maomao and Jinshi to the Shrine of Choosing. Which, again, I think this has a lot to do with what's kind of connected to in the previous episode that the emperor was thinking about Maomao and that he's noting that she has a lot of knowledge. And so I think that was kind of the first sign that we have that he probably wanted to figure out this place. He's been trying. It gets note in this episode that he has tried the thing before. He has tried to figure out the Shrine of Choosing. It seems like it's something important to him to have this blessing, and he's not figuring out. So he figures he can bring Maomao there. And bring Jinshi too. But yeah, the Shrine of Choosing, I immediately figured it out. This is one of those cases where I immediately figured out what it was going to probably... I didn't know how it was going to do it, but I knew that it was probably going to have something to do with color blindness. That they get there, they meet the teacher at the door. It seems like he's really, really familiar in how he talks to the emperor. I like how Maomao kind of points that out. He's being very bold in how he's talking to the emperor. He's like, yeah, you could try it again. Nothing's going to change. Like literally the emperor of this land is standing before him. He's like, yeah, you could try again, but it's not going to change anything. But yeah, they go into this shrine of choosing and there's colored doors. Like I said, I immediately kind of picked up on it's probably going to have something to do with color blindness, which I guess I didn't, at the time, didn't really connect it to the idea of it being a bloodline thing, which that does technically make sense to me. I don't know why they would have a shrine of choosing within a bloodline itself, having it have to involve color blindness in some way and it not be bloodline related, because otherwise, how can you have a consistency in people in bloodlines being able to actually, pass this test? I didn't think it was going to be a puzzle of sorts. I think that was really the kind of thing that I expect that they want to throw you off with the note saying, don't go through this door, don't go through this door. That would sort of imply an idea of a puzzle. Like, oh yeah, the colors this, and this is probably equal to this. Color blindness seemed to match more that idea. Which, yes, at a very brief moment, I had a thought process that Maomao was going to be colorblind, but she calls all the doors very clearly. So again, and there is an aspect of adapting, and what specifically you're colorblind to could matter there. But she never gave an indication that she was not catching the colors. But yeah, the poor emperor fails the choosing again, and it says specifically at the end, you're a child of royalty, yet not a child of Wang Mu, which I think that right there kind of cemented it for me being bloodline related, is that, yes, it's essentially saying that, yeah, you are a child of royalty. Like, there's no doubt about it. If you're here, that's probably going to be the case. But you're not a child of Wang Mu, which that would imply to me, yes, in the lineage of this royal family, way up here, Wang Mu is there. So yes, the assumption there is that it's going to be having more of her bloodline that's coming down this chain of family. But yes, as they're leaving, the teacher decides to give Maomao a little bit of a prod. She's trying to figure it out. Like, what is this whole deal? There's all these doors. How exactly does this work? And he's like, yeah, Loumen would figure it out. She kind of assumes that it means because, yes, Loumen went to the west. He traveled to the west. And so he would probably know about the aspect of there being like 1 in 10 people have a color blindness. And so, yes, if he's seen these colored doors, he'd probably figure this out, assuming that, yes, Wang Moon came from the west. But yeah, the emperor, I love this. Mom was like, hey, can I go in there again? He's like, yeah. The emperor going in with you again, that would look really bad. The emperor of this land is going in there with a servant girl over and over again. And yeah, you can't solve it for him. That's not how that works. I do like that concept there. And again, it gets into what they eventually get into with how this whole system works, is that, yes, they can bring a consort in there. They can bring in a woman into the place, and she can figure it out for them, which the reason for that is keeping that bloodline in there. But no, the emperor's like, oh, I'll just elevate her to consort. He just casually, just appointing her to be one of his consorts. I'll just make her one of my consorts. That'll work out. It's like, oh, yeah, wait, no, I don't want to get on Lacan's bad side. Never mind. It'll be difficult to... Convincing Lacan will be a little bit troublesome. That was wrong. I'm sorry, that was wrong. Just Jinshi just stand there with him, not really much of a reaction as I was kind of expecting from Jinshi, but I guess, again, he's not going to really kind of speak out that much if that's what the emperor says, but... That was wrong. But no, he ends up turning to Jinshi and saying, why don't you take her instead? Which, again, right there, locking it even more. And I kind of surprised that Maomao doesn't want to think about it. Maomao does not want to think about it, does not want to get involved. But I would kind of assuming that right there, it would immediately click. Like the emperor just turned to Jinshi and said, you instead. Again, this is something that's only supposed to be taken by royalty. Only royalty is supposed to go through there. And yes, technically him bringing Maomao with him does imply the idea that they are somehow connected. Now, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bring up with them at that point saying, well, is Jinshi bringing Maomao in there as a consort? What is the relationship between Maomao and Jinshi? Question mark. But I think, again, in how it kind of ends this episode, it becomes more of an aspect of don't ask questions of Jinshi. It's almost as if this teacher respects Jinshi more than the emperor that's standing right in front of him. Declines him bringing Maomao, but is okay with Jinshi bringing Maomao. Question mark. But now they go in there and she figures out that it's all color blindness and goes through the entire thing, eventually getting to this opening, which apparently whenever they pass the test, they're supposed to make an oath to the people at that point, thus proving everything, all that kind of stuff. And then we get the little insights into exactly what's going on there as Maomao figured it out, which is that, yes, this lady, Wang Mu, apparently traveled from the west, came into the lands, And then what she claims, and again, in the story, she came there already pregnant, had a child, and, ruled the land. What Maomao is figuring out is that no, she came into the land from the west and actually was impregnated by somebody of the land with the leader himself. So this was an aspect of her coming in there with a virgin birth. This is an aspect of her coming to land and having a child with the leader, and then apparently creating the story that she has this bloodline that must be preserved. She's so cunning, she created the story that everybody followed from those generations on. This concept of preserving her bloodline, which is of the people of the West, within the land itself. And the idea that only the people that can pass through these doors, which again will have this color blindness, will be able to be the next ruler. It was a very clever way of doing that because she wanted to preserve the traditions of the land itself, which is that the men pass on the bloodline. The males are the rulership, and they're the ones that the bloodline will follow through with. The only way to do that is ensure that it has this one trait, which is the colorblindness that she herself had. Very clever. Very clever. I agree with Maomao on this whole kind of hypothesis. It's an extremely peaceful yet slow shift of power. It's essentially diluting the royalty and the leadership of this land with the people of the West. Her people, her bloodline. Very clever. Very clever. Again, because technically, as a child is born, it could have more of the father than the mother, and vice versa. And so the only way to ensure that her bloodline remains and they keep down that path of her strength of bloodline is to do this trial. But unfortunately, yes, the previous one kind of broke that. The previous emperor kind of broke that because, yes, they had too much of her bloodline in it, and that's probably why his two brothers passed away from illness, is because they had a little bit too much. It has adverse effects from having the bloodline becoming too concentrated, and that cost them their lives. But the last emperor, that was fine. He had good eyesight, thus implying that he didn't have that, and that he was able to avoid doing the actual choosing. So really interesting way to kind of shifting that. It sort of implies how Wang Mu created this mastermind plan right here in order to essentially cement themselves in the bloodline, but almost created the effect of their bloodline becoming too concentrated and thus breaking the tradition altogether. And thus, she got left behind. That bloodline has inadvertently, without anybody intentionally doing it, got left behind. Very interesting. But yeah, that last comment. The teacher makes that last comment. This girl figured out that mystery. Wang Mu had exceptional wisdom. If you dilute the bloodline at this point, why not with her? It's like, yeah, if you know the mystery now, you know the secret. The emperor now knows the secret. So you're going to dilute the bloodline at this point. You're no longer going to keep to these traditions and trying to keep her bloodline in there. If you're going to do it this smart girl right here. This girl right here, Maomao, why don't you go ahead and, why not with her? Why not dilute it with her smarts? Yeah, I don't want to upset Lacan. Don't want to upset Lacan. And she's also apparently lacking 15 centimeters around here. Poor Maomao. Poor Maomao. But again, that last line was probably the most telling out of this entire episode. He says, be careful. Some may not like you incorporating outside blood. Which I'm kind of wondering if that means the idea of Maomao herself because she's an outsider of this palace. I'm thinking it's outsider of a different land. That's typically what makes people upset. Which, yes, implies the idea that the higher powers within this land, the people that have all the power, not just the emperor, the people that have the power to overthrow the emperor, they don't like the idea of bringing outside blood, which that would immediately make me believe anything that's outside of the lands, which would be outside of, like Gyokyo, Lishu, they're from families of areas outside of here, but they're within this empire. I'm thinking they're talking about, like, the envoy. The envoy that's currently in there, which is probably the massive question mark right now, is what they're doing. The assumption is that the envoy is trying to get one of those two girls within the emperor's chambers. They want to grab the emperor. And I think there's a lot of talk happening right now with those two envoys being there. But that aside, the bigger comment here, again, is the emperor saying, I'm well aware of that. And then the teacher says, does His Majesty truly understand? And who responds? Jinshi. Does Your Majesty truly understand? Please be careful. And Jinshi says, understood. Yes. Again, no doubt. I think that means that Jinshi is supposed to be the next ruler. That the emperor is in that position because he's basically being a dummy for anybody to come after,
and they're trying to protect Jinshi specifically, allowing him to hide until the time comes, so that if the Emperor gets killed, Jinshi just steps up. They figured out who'd killed him, and they step up, which makes me believe if there has been attempts at Jinshi's life, which apparently was not intended for him to be the target, because again, he's hiding, it makes me believe that somebody already knows this and is going after Jinshi specifically and not the Emperor. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of backstabbing and a lot of, knifing and poisoning happening in this rear palace and this empire in general. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are trying to take down consorts. We're trying to take down possible princes. All this stuff is happening. But I think one of the plot lines is going to be somebody going after Jinshi directly, not just the Emperor. But I think it's eventually going to come down to them finding out who's coming after the Emperor, and then the choice coming to Jinshi, do you want to take over the position from the Emperor like was originally planned? And Jinshi's going to say, no, brother, you keep it. You keep that spot. I think that's how I'll eventually come to. But again, a super interesting episode, really fascinating episode. I love this backstory stuff about the actual land itself. I think this idea of this queen basically seeding her bloodline into the lands and trying to create a whole system in order to keep the bloodline in there. Essentially, again, taking control, this shift of power to their bloodline, in a sense. Super fascinating stuff. And again, getting more confirmation around Jinshi. More of the Emperor. I like the Emperor, dude. I want to make her consort. He was cool, dude. I want more of the Emperor. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on episode 31 of Apothecary Diaries. Hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you hit the like button down below, comment, let me know what's the episode. Additionally, if you like this content and want to support on more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate it. Until next time, you'll take care.